Let's turn our attention now to where we are on migration. This, by the way, as it's very likely that at some point this week we're going to hit the 10,000 mark about the number of people who've come over on those Channel boats. Once again, stopping the boats. Not going quite as well as Rishi Sunak might have hoped. But this also comes as a National Audit Office report as talking about our clear timetable for full post-Brexit border controls. And, well, basically, there isn't one. Let's talk about both of these stories with Stephen Woolfe. He's Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia. How are you?
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I mean, just first of all, let's just talk about, those numbers. Stopping the boats. We were told last year those figures are down. Whoosh, straight back up the first 3 months of this year. They've gone sky high again, likely to be 10,000 already this year. We'll be beating, previous years at this rate. What's going wrong?
What's going wrong is I've been off for 6 months, Julia, not being able to actually report or do much on the research. And I've come back 6 months later and nothing has actually changed whatsoever, except the numbers. The numbers are going up. They are greater than they were in 2018, 19, 20, 21 and 22. And so what we're seeing there, the failures is this government actually to get its immigration policy correct, both on legal and illegal. And when we're looking at illegal migration, they have failed to be able to work effectively with the French. They're failing to work with their plans globally, where they say that they're going to go down the chain and stop the people traffickers early on in Turkey and other countries like Libya. So it's failure all around. And I think really a lot of people are just exasperated and exhausted by consistent failure. Yeah. And if we think the Labour Party is going to do any better, that's...
I was just going to ask you, because as far as I can tell, in terms of like Keir Starmer's 6 pledges, there's this new border control, command centre or whatever, which has already been set up, by the way. But again, the entire policy of Labour is, we're just going to ask Emmanuel Macron nicely. That's literally that's literally their policy.
It is, and it's because you have so many pie-in-the-sky EU association remainers and whatever you like to call them. They actually genuinely believe that the EU is going to work and functionally stop the boats if we are friendly to them and nice to them. And yet, if we look at the New Deal on immigration and asylum that was opposed by Poland and opposed by Hungary, and now you have the Dutch government formed, they too are opposing it. That won't come into play until 2026. And they're allowing 1 million people a year are getting into the EU. And they're saying that if you want to work there, if you want to allow them to come in, you've got to contribute 20,000 euros per person. That's 20 billion.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Can I also ask you about this National Audit Office report has come out today saying the government has no clear timetable to fully implement its post-Brexit border controls with the EU. The UK said it hopes to have the world's most effective border by 2025. But the National Audit Office said the strategy lacks a clear timetable and an integrated cross-government delivery plan. That's code for no, you haven't, isn't it? What does that actually involve, and what's going wrong and why?
What it actually involves is when they're talking about a cross-departmental link is to use law enforcement, obviously, security, the Home Office, the Cabinet Office, coming up with very clear strategies of how to change legislation, move around people, use funding effectively. And what the National Audit Office is saying is the strategy that is supposed to combine all of these together and make it work effectively just isn't there. And you're quite right, the code is that it isn't working effectively. And we shouldn't be surprised on that, because there are obviously, whenever you make change in government, there's recalcitrants from the civil service who do not want to see enormous change. That's why so many people call it the blob. Those within the civil service who do want to effective change are often sidelined and pushed out. And then, of course, you have government ministers moving around fairly regularly with
So you haven't got the continuity. Well, they're saying it's a £4.7 billion cost for the overall cost of implementing new arrangements, and you'll get the Ramonas going, oh, look at the cost of Brexit. Yeah, there's loads of cost of Brexit. You extricate yourself after 40-odd years in one organisation who are just money-grabbing types. This is what is going to happen. It's a small price for democracy. The fact that, here's my thing, EU is a rubbish organisation. Our government and our civil service are pretty much just as rubbish. But the key thing is there are rubbish and they're accountable to us. And at some point we get to throw them out or put new ones in or have some accountability. And that's the difference. It was never going to mean that everything was perfect. None of us who voted for Brexit thought that. But at least they would be accountable to us, the voters, and that's what mattered. Now, I just want to get in one more story very quickly. Fascinating new coalition government in Holland, led by, well, it won't be led by, he won't be the Prime Minister, Geert Wilders. We've got a sort of, they say, you know, far right, but, you know, he's got some pretty dodgy views, he really does. But he also says a lot of stuff that, frankly, a lot of mainstream parties should be saying about the need for, you know, to tackle the mass net immigration. But they teamed up with the Dutch Farmers Party and others, and they are throwing out net zero. Love that. I'm going to talk about that later in the show. But also, they're set for an immigration showdown with the EU. They're basically saying we will not take our, quote, fair share of asylum seekers. We're going to start forcibly, if necessary, deporting those coming to the country we don't want. That's what the people of the Netherlands have voted for. That showdown's going to get pretty bitter, though, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And of course, I just referred to the fact of this new deal on immigration and asylum, which has said to countries such as Holland that if you don't accept your fair share, you're going to have to pay 20,000 to 30,000 euros to the countries that will accept it. And what you found is that Poland and Hungary voted against it, and the deal still went through. But what was fascinating, Julia, is last week, on Thursday, a letter signed by 14 countries, and this included Holland, said that they have deep concerns about this and that they will start to look at their own strategies to how they can manage immigration across the European Union, illegal immigration, that is. And so I think Geert Wilders is going to be joining up with Meloni in Italy, the Danish, who have already had some strong views and started to implement ideas such as those like Rwanda, Poland and Hungary. And you're going to have an almighty block of people now, countries, who are now going to say the European Commission's got this wrong, and maybe the implementation date that they have of 2026 will not apply.
But again, listening to their voters, mad idea, not something the EU is very big on. Always good to talk to you. Glad we had a chance. Stephen Woolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity.